You're in the water loop.
Water loop, water loop, water loop.
Hey everyone, this is Travis with Waterloop. I want to tell you about the Flume smart water monitor that I use at my house. Flume is the perfect device for tracking your water usage in real time with your smartphone. You can see exactly how much water you're using with showers, toilets, sinks, appliances, outside irrigation, any way you use water. Flume lets you set daily, weekly, and monthly water budgets. It also alerts you if there's excessive water use and if it detects a leak. In fact, right when I hooked up Flume at my house, it alerted me of a leak. I was losing a gallon of water every 6 minutes outside of my water line. Turns out it had been there for months, and I was wasting ridiculous amounts of water and money. I'm not sure when I would have found that without Flume. Flume is super easy to install. You wrap a band around your water meter, just like you put a watch on your wrist. Connect to Wi-Fi, download the app, and you're all set. No plumber needed. Now you can use promo code WATERLOOP to save 15% off of Flume at flumetech.com. With Flume, you'll never be surprised by a water bill again.
Water loop, water loop, water loop.
Welcome to Waterloop. This is Travis, joined by Meyer, Managing Director of Plus Pool. Kara, how you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm well. Really excited for this conversation. I'm fascinated by this project and some of the components of it. I definitely saw a lot of the buzz online and on social media several months ago about this art installation, this light art installation that was in the East River in New York City that was, I guess, educating people about water quality. And this is part of an effort to eventually get a pool built in the river, right? So we'll dive into the art piece in a little bit, but what is this vision for having a pool in the East River in New York City?
Yeah, so we conceived of an idea one hot summer. A group of artists and architects, my friends, who thought, hey, New York is surrounded by water and we can't access it. That's crazy. And as artists and architects do, conceived of a idea to solve that problem. Plus Pool is a water filtering floating swimming pool. It filters the river water through the walls of the pool, cleans about 1 million gallons of water every day, and discharges clean water back into the river while people are swimming in it. So there's no chlorine, no chemicals, anything like that. It's all natural river water, and it's meant to provide access to the river for New Yorkers for the first time in over 100 years.
Wow. So when did this idea come about? When did you start thinking about this?
Yeah, so the idea itself came from a group of architects, Dong Ping Wong and Juana Stanescu, and designers Archie Coates and Jeff Franklin, my colleagues who were in 2010, I think, in our early 20s, just bouncing around ideas, and who knew that 10 years later, I would have a full-time job and we'd all be working towards this vision of having New Yorkers access their rivers for swimming, with New York City, the city of New York.
All right. Well, while we're talking, I'm going to real quick on the screen put up an artist rendering of what this pool would look like. It's pretty awesome to think about it this way, and you see this kind of structure that's out obviously into the river. It looks like any pool you would see, right? With lanes going different ways and chairs people can hang out in. Obviously an incredible view that people would get to have right there along the city. I think one of the first questions people would have is swimming in the East River in New York City. There's no way that's safe. So it's great you've explained this filtration aspect. How will the water quality be actually in the pool? Like what type of filtration does this concept provide?
Yeah, so we are meeting the EPA standards for swimmable water through the filtration system. But the water itself has actually improved a lot over the past several years since the Clean Water Act. The city of New York and a lot of amazing environmental agencies have done a lot of work to make sure that that would happen. We are still built on a CSO system here, so the combined sewage overflows are primarily what contributes to the water quality not being up to par to swim 24/7. But it is very clean. I think a lot of what we've been doing as an institution, we created a nonprofit, Friends of Plus Pool, to develop the project a couple of years ago. And what we've been doing as we're working to provide access through Plus Pool, we've really been trying to raise public awareness of the quality of the water in the rivers and show people that it's not as bad as people think majority of the time, and when it is, what's happening, and change the public perception of the rivers that's been negative since, Kramer swam in the river and all of that. We didn't know as artists and designers that anything about water quality before we started on this. So, but Plus Pool does two things. It filters and cleans the river water so that, again, 24/7 you can access the river. But it also protects you from the currents. So there's a swift current that is quite dangerous if in a lot of places. So it's also protecting you there.
Yeah. So, you've been kind of kicking this around and working on it for a number of years. And what has to happen for this to become a reality? I mean, you've got a lot of different agencies to work with and people to get bought into this and approvals to get and all that kind of stuff, I imagine. What's the process that you've been going through and that you have to kind of finish going through to make this happen?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, innovation is not easy sometimes. So we have been at it for a while. The first several years before we even incorporated as a nonprofit was really a lot of R&D and trying to understand if it was even technically feasible. I mean, this was an idea that we had that just was born out of idealism and not knowing anything about water quality and filtration systems, not knowing that this kind of filtration system didn't even exist already on the market. We had kind of envisioned it as being a piece of architecture where we would insert giant filter system, right? So the first couple of years was specializing that, trying to understand if it's even feasible. And for the past couple of years, as after we once we identified the feasibility, the technical feasibility, we incorporated this nonprofit because we wanted it to be public. We've really been a grassroots advocacy campaign to get the city of New York to provide us access to an area of the river to do the work. Last year, the Economic Development Corporation of New York City released an RFEI for a self-filtering swimming pool that took steps towards that, which is super exciting. And the next big hurdle that we would have is to really define the project within the regulatory structures of New York City. So we're not a swimming pool by definition. We're not a bathing beach by definition. We're not any of these things. So there's going to be some additional collaboration that really needs to happen with the government to make sure that we're setting the right kind of precedents or not setting the wrong kind of precedents, and we're creating a way to facilitate the realization of this project safely for New Yorkers.
What's the reaction or the support from kind of those agencies you have to work with, the people you've probably been talking to for the past couple of years with the city? Are they like, okay, we're kind of seeing that this could happen, or let's see if we can figure out a way to make it happen? What's their stance?
Yeah, it's definitely changed over time. In many ways, we're the project that won't go away. I think anyone who is realizing something like this or attempting to realize something like this has a sort of dedication that has to be consistent to make it happen in the end. So because of that, I think, and because of the technical work that we've done and the educational work that we've done as a nonprofit and the respect that we've built within the communities, there is a lot more attention being paid to this. The Manhattan Borough President called for swimming in the East River as a result of some campaigns we did and some other advocacy groups work. We're among a group of environmental organizations, I think, that are really care about this, and think that it's an important way to connect with the water in a way that will have New Yorkers appreciate it more and want to fight to protect it and keep it clean and improve the water quality just through that. We've had the agencies, collaborating with us on some aspects and, having us propose ways to solve solutions on other aspects. I think that it's still in the works, so it'll be an interesting story once we do realize it and how that came about. Because again, it's innovation that's never been done before, and there's a lot of boxes that we need to recreate to check. And obviously our goal is to make sure it's as safe as possible, or safer than anything else. So any other way to access the river. So we're working towards that collaboratively.
Sure. So, I imagine a lot of people think the idea is just crazy, right? Like having a pool in the East River there along Manhattan. You probably get a lot of that. Has that changed over time, or do you get also the other side where people are like, that's awesome? I mean, what's kind of like the general public reaction you get?
Yeah, I mean, the reason we're here today is because the public responded very positively to the idea and our renderings early on. Again, before we became a company, a nonprofit, we were raising money on Kickstarter for different feasibility tests. There was a huge response from people all around the world. And I think that vision, it's even instilled in some people internationally, new ideas that have kind of been spurred out of this. We're sort of part of this unofficial international urban swim group of people around the world that are looking at creative ways to access urban waterways. And yeah, I think there has been some skepticism over time. I'd be lying if I said, that wasn't true. But ultimately, again, I think the consistency and the dedication that we've given to this project has changed minds, and people now see that it's possible and believe that it's possible, and they want it to happen. So, definitely the first couple of meetings when we were going around as naive young people, not knowing anything about anything regulatory structure wise, there is a little bit of skepticism, and this is crazy. But tell me more. There's a level of intrigue that I think people want, are curious enough to kind of open up and explore. And we've been riding that wave because we believe that it's possible, and it is possible. Now we know that. So it's just about, like I said, checking the right boxes and getting to a point where it's a true collaboration in terms of safety, government regulation, equity, access, environment, all of these things that we tap into.
You mentioned you're kind of part of this informal network of people and groups that are trying to, promote urban water access and swimming opportunities and stuff. That was one of my first things when I saw this, and I wondered, are there other places in the world, other cities that have something similar? Really a really big metro area that's got a pool in a river there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we are, as far as we know, the world's first water filtering swimming pool, a self-filtering swimming pool. But a lot of cities around the world, thanks to major municipal infrastructure investments that have actually brought the water quality to the standards needed and required, some of these cities have been able to open up their waterways to public swimming. And there's different ways that the city is providing access, or designers are providing access, platforms, floating structures. There are floating pools that exist in the world that are pools built on top of barges. So that concept is not new at all, and in fact was a huge inspiration for the designers of Plus Pool. But yeah, actually accessing, creating a system and a structure that allows regular access to urban waterways that have been cut off to the public for swimming because of environmental issues. As far as I know, we're among the first.
Yeah, there you go. That's awesome. The plus, what's the plus about? What's the shape? What's the plus all about?
Yeah, so it's actually designed as four pools in one. Each arm of the plus is a different pool. One is a kids pool, one is a sports pool, one is a lounge pool, and one is a lap pool. So it's meant to really provide access for all kinds of swimming for everybody at the same time and facilitate that. It's a symbol of inclusion in terms of that, I think. And positivity in terms of how we want to protect our waterways. So it has a lot of different meanings, but design-wise, it was pretty simple. How can you create a space in which everyone can enjoy the water in the different ways that they like to at the same time? But then it's also facilitates, it can be opened up as one large swimming area or a 9,000 square foot pool for play for everyone, or it's actually Olympic length when you open it up from one end of the pool to the other.
Oh, that's awesome. You've mentioned a couple times about like equity and access. Could you expand on that? Why that's important to you and what that means?
Absolutely. I think that it's one of the reasons we decided to create a nonprofit and not just realize the project privately as some sort of membership group or facility. It's part of the reason we, I think, have spent so long working on it. The New Yorkers used to swim in the river all the time 100 years ago. The water was safer before the Industrial Revolution, and there were floating bathhouses in and around New York City, actually up until about the 1930s. And this was historically a really amazing social space for primarily immigrant populations using it to bathe. It was a favorite pastime by many New Yorkers. 45% of New Yorkers used them at the time, so it's about recreating that, but it's also making sure that the first time that we are able to provide access for swimming to New Yorkers, that it is for everyone, because no one owns the river. No one owns the river but us, citizens, and everyone should be entitled to access it, we believe. So that's really where it comes from and why that's so important and rooted into our mission and vision for safe swimming in New York City.
Sure. Shifting a little bit to the water quality, and which carries us into the art component here. You mentioned that the water quality isn't as bad as people might think. Could you expand on that?
Yeah. So like a lot of urban cities, actually, not just New York City. I think I mentioned this earlier. We're built on a CSO system where when there are heavy rains or heavy storms in New York City, the water goes into the storm pipes and mixes with the sewage system and discharges untreated water into the river because the sewer systems can't handle the load. So untreated water going into the river, of course, means that there's poor water quality. And I think that and on other days when there's not a heavy storm, our systems are able to process that water and treat it and discharge it safely. So I think that's the primary issue. Of course, there's some industrial issues every now and then, or chemical spills or things like that happen here and there. But again, for the most part, and particularly in New York City, in New York State, who has really stepped up in terms of fighting to protect the waterways with regulatory and policy that creates systems for companies to abide by. It's really changed. We know a lot more now. We're testing as much as we can and trying to improve it every day. So I think that the disconnect there is the public awareness. And I don't know why. I think it is partly because of longstanding social and cultural instances like jokes and references to polluted water and the dead bodies and this and that, just from the polluted past that we've had. And so we, among a lot of other amazing nonprofits in New York City and other organizations, are fighting to change that narrative.
Awesome. So how did you all use art recently to try to, I think, raise awareness about the water quality and about this pool project? And I'm gonna put this piece of art up on the screen as you're talking about it.
Okay, cool. So we created a floating light sculpture in the river that connected to our water quality instruments and changed colors based on the quality of the water in the river. So it was meant to really captivate people in a unique new way, people that perhaps aren't necessarily always in tune with environmental issues. It was viewable from a variety of viewpoints, from the bridges to the esplanades and on both the Brooklyn and the Manhattan side. We had amazing partners in the National Endowment for the Arts for this. We had Howard Hughes Corporation. Heineken was a big sponsor and supporter of this project. And it was massive. It spread on social media quite well. It was an entry point for people to learn a little bit more. And people, I think, were surprised to see that it was blue a lot more than it was pink, which were the good and bad indications. And we worked with Columbia University's Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory on actually creating an algorithm that predicted the bacteria levels in real time to help inform the changing of the lights, because bacteria tests take a 24-hour lab test. So we created this algorithm that then we cross-referenced with the lab tests so that we could present the data in real time. And like I said, I think it attracted a lot of new people to water quality issues. Several art and culture, publications were posting about it, as well as environmental institutions or city blogs and things. So it kind of had this wide appeal. And the sculpture, we directed people through our materials and on-site to an amazing new water quality dashboard that we created with our friends at Reactor. And this really kind of dove into the science behind what was happening and what was changing the lights from all of the parameters that we were tracking, from the bacterial algorithm to the live data on turbidity and oxygen levels and things like that. So it was meant to kind of visualize the science and the spreadsheets that mean nothing to most people, including us as designers, and make it a little bit more accessible.
Yeah. So the blue is when kind of it was safe for swimming is in essence. And then if it was pink or purplish, that was when there's maybe the water quality wasn't the best.
Absolutely.
Okay. And how long did this stay in the river then?
We had it in for 3 months. There's a moratorium on how long you can have things in the river for certain things like this, particularly as you come into the winter months. So it was a temporary installation. It lives on in many ways through the dashboard and through all the visuals that were captured.
Yeah, I think it's so awesome. I mean, I wonder, did you hear from other cities and other places that were like, wow, we want to do one of these also? How do we put this in our river? I mean, I would love to see something like that in my community. It's just so cool. Such a great public awareness tool and just awesome art,
Yeah, absolutely. We did get some inquiries about that, and we're still, excited about the possibility of carrying the project on in new ways. It was not an inexpensive project or a small feat in terms of even the regulatory processes of getting that built. In some ways mirrored plus pool, the pool itself, just on a temporary scale. So it was a pretty heavy lift. So we're excited about the possibility of doing it with other people. Should that dedication come in as well with a potential partner.
Yeah, it sounds like money is a big part of the equation there, like it is with many things. So, what's kind of the future now? What's on your to-do list for the next 6 months, year? Like how close might you be to all this becoming a reality?
Yeah, well, we're closer than ever every day that goes by. I've been working on it for a long time. New York is obviously going through a very difficult time right now. So we're all on pause.
Yeah.
And it's a tough time for our community in our city. So that's our focus right now is being there for our community and making sure that everyone has what they need during this pretty difficult time. Community is a big part of who we are and what we do, and why we're doing this. But we do believe that, when the time does come to pick up where we left off in our conversations with what next steps on the city and all the regulatory issues and everything I've already spoken about, that, we will be a quality of life project for New York City when we come out of this crisis. And, it's a new green infrastructure project and workforce development and all the things that we hope that the community will help rebuild the community. So that's kind of where it's a weird time.
Yeah, no doubt, without a doubt. Well, I'm so glad we had this chance to chat, and I definitely am cheering for you big time, and hope to make the trip up to New York one day to take a swim in that pool. It'll happen one day, so I look forward to it.
Well, yes. Thank you so much for your interest.
Waterloop, waterloop, waterloop.
Thank you to the sponsor of this episode, the Flume Smart Water Monitor that tracks your home's water use 24/7, alerting you to excessive water use and leaks. Use promo code WATERLOOP now for 15% off at flumetech.com.
You're in the water loop.